Hey guys, this is Mitch with FinePoint CGI, and today we talk about how to create a snow shader using the visual shader graph inside of Godot. So we go through the process of talking about basic controls in the shader graph. We talk about how to do a dot product, how to isolate your world space normal so that way you can get your snow to lay on top. We also talk about how to combine textures and how to respect your normal map when you are combining your textures and making sure that your normal map is properly valued so it doesn't get overblown. And we go over how to break up the edge of your snow shader so that it doesn't look like it just exists there and it cuts off with a line. It actually breaks up that edge using noise. So that's what I have in store for you guys today. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so first thing that we need to do is we need to create our shader. Now, if you don't have this scene, you can go ahead and pull it from the description below, or of course, this tutorial will work with any object. If you just throw it in the scene and you want to put snow on it, this tutorial will work with that. But if you don't have a scene for this, go ahead and check the link in the description below, and you can go ahead and download this scene and this project so you can see how everything works and also do it yourself so you can follow along. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on my cube mesh here, my gatehouse here. And I'm going to go ahead and click on my material. I'm going to go ahead and go to my shader material. I'm going to click on that and I'm going to click on my shader and add in a new visual shader. Now, the visual shader editor, if you click on visual shader here, it will go ahead and open up the visual shader editor. And this editor is super cool and very easy to use. So if you use the middle mouse button, you can pan. So you can see we can pan around. If you hit Control and middle mouse wheel, you can zoom in and out. And if you let go of the control and you just do normal scroll wheel, you can scroll up and down. So that's the general gist of the controls. Now, if you need to add in a node, which in our case, we're going to need to do that just for everything to work, we're going to need to hit right click. And from here, we can go ahead and add in our nodes, or if we know what we're looking for, we can hit search. So let's go ahead and start building our little snow shader. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and right click and add in a camera input here. And then we're going to also add in a normal. Now, the reason why we're adding our camera and our normal is because we're going to try to get our object's world normal position. So if we look at our normal value, our normals are based off of our own object space normals. And you can see that as we move around, it changes colors, right? So we have to mix it with our camera to make it more of like a world space thing, if that makes sense. So the easiest way to mix a normal map is by using a transform vector multiplication. So we'll type transform vector multiplication right here. So we'll double click that. And we'll go ahead and attach this guy to this guy. And this will link our code right here. So you'll see we'll do that. And then we'll drag this guy in. And you will see that now we have a thing that changes color depending on where we are in world space, which is really cool, but that's not exactly what we want, because this is taking depth into account. At least that's kind of how I understood it, is it's doing a vector 4, not doing a vector 3. So what we have to do is we have to come in here and change this to 3 by 3. And what that's going to do is that's only going to color this based off of the axes that it's in. So you can see how we have green on the top for y-axis. We have dark red on the back for our x-axis. We have blue for our z-axis. And we have red for our x-axis here. So what we can do is we can use this to basically determine what angle we want our snow. So what we can do is we can right click and add in what's called a dot product. So we'll type in dot and then hit enter and then connect this guy to here, connect this guy to here. And what a dot product does is it multiplies two vectors and allows you to basically use it for vector multiplication, more or less. So what we can do is we can hit 0, 1 and hit enter, and you'll see that it only does the y-axis. If I change this to 1 and 0, you will see that it only does the positive X value. Same thing if we do -1, it will only show the front of an object. So if you ever have a object that you need to only have the front or only have the back or the top, the dot product is an easy way to do it. Now, in my case, I'm going to go ahead and say 1 on the y-axis, and I'm going to go ahead and use that. Now, from here, we need to make it look like we have some kind of snow, right? Because there's a snow shader. So how can we do that? Well, what we can do is first, we can bring in our texture. So we have our little rock texture here, and we can bring in our snow texture here as well. So now we have a rock and a snow texture, okay? And we need to combine them. So the easiest way to combine them is by doing a mix of our two values and mix it based off of a scalar. So you can see how we have a mix with an S for scalar. Scalar is basically just a weight value, just a lerp between these two values, basically. So if we take this object and we put it in the bottom, and we take our rock and we put it on the top, and then we go ahead and we drag our dot product to our weight, when we mix these, you will see that we now have our snow on our object. Perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. So now that we have this, let's go ahead and mix our normal map, because this looks great, but it's super flat. So let's add a normal map. So we'll come in and we'll drag in our rock normal right here. And then we'll go ahead and drag in our snow normal as well. And we'll go ahead and say that this is a normal map and a normal map. And then we'll grab our vector scale. We'll Control C, Control V, and we'll go ahead and make sure we keep this the same. So this rock texture is on top, this snow texture is on the bottom. So same thing, rock texture on top, snow texture on the bottom. And then we'll hook it to our normal map, not our normal. And then we will go ahead and drag our dot product in and let go. And you will see that we will start to get our normal map start kicking into our project, which is awesome. Now, we don't want our stuff to have too high of a weight. So let's go ahead and add in a, so we'll add in a clamp, and then we'll drag this over here, drag this up here, and hook that into our normal map. And that'll just normalize our normals, if that makes sense, so that it doesn't quite get too crazy, if that makes sense, because we don't want our normal map to be too crazy. Because if we drag that in versus this in, and I'm sure that you guys will tell me in the comments that that's not the way we do it, and that's totally fine. We could try a vector 3 clamp, and let's see if that maybe does a little bit better. Yeah, I think I'll stick with a vector 3 clamp. I think that'll be a little bit better. So we'll go ahead and keep that. So let's delete this. There we go. And what we'll do is we will go ahead and start making this a little bit better, right? Because we have a basic snow shader. And the coolest thing about our snow shader that we currently have is if we select our cube and we pull back on it, you will notice that the snow starts taking over. See that? So depending on the angle and orientation of your object can determine how much snow you actually have on your object, which is really cool. Now, we're going to want to change this a little bit so that way we can make it a little bit more interesting, okay? And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to actually show you guys on the sphere what this looks like as well. So we'll go ahead and save this. And we'll just save it as new shader material 2 because this is my second time recording this. And we'll go ahead and click on my CSG sphere, and we'll grab new shader material 2 and drag this guy in. And you can kind of see what we're doing here. So this is kind of cool because you can see like what it looks like on an object, but it's nice to have a sphere to kind of see how this works. So it looks pretty good. It looks pretty decent. So what we'll do is we'll come in here, and we'll go ahead and start breaking up our shader a little bit. It would be really nice to be able to have our shader be able to kind of react to our normal map. You'll notice that our normal map isn't really affected by our shader at all. It just kind of exists, right? They're being mixed, but it's not quite the same, I guess, if that makes sense. There's no normal map showing through on the snow. It just kind of covers all of the stone. But what if I want it to show up a little bit, right? So what we can do to achieve this effect is we can come back here like this. We can go ahead and start doing some cool vector math to help make this a little bit better, or I guess some cool math in general. So what we'll do is we'll right click and we'll type multiply. We'll go ahead and multiply our texture by 2, and that's going to just make it really intense. If you look at it, you'll see it's just way more intense than what it was at 1. If we set it to 1, that's what it looks like. If we set it to 2, that's what it looks like. And then from there, we're going to give us some controls here to kind of adjust the intensity of our map here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a brightness and contrast to help this out. Now, we can't just add in a brightness because it doesn't exist. And same thing with the contrast. They both don't exist. So what we can do is we can do what's called a scalar mix. And what we'll do is we'll say mix like this, and we'll drag this into here. And then what we can do is we can hit 0 for this, and we'll go ahead and add in a uniform scalar right here. Okay, and this will adjust the brightness. Okay. And we'll say brightness of normal mix. And then we will do the same thing again, except for this time, instead of 0, we'll do 0.5. And instead, we'll call this contrast of mix. And then we can take this and go ahead and multiply it by our dot product. So we'll type multiply, just like that. We'll drag our dot product in, we'll drag our scalar mix, and we'll go ahead and drag that into here. Now I know what you're thinking, what did we just do? Well, let me show you. So if we come back like this, we take a look at our snow right here, you'll see, first of all, we suddenly have more detail in our snow, which is really cool. But also, we come in here and we open up our shader parameters and we start adjusting our brightness. You can see that we can start choosing how much intensity we want to show behind our snow. So we could say, oh, there's no intensity, right? It didn't do anything. Or there's a bunch of intensity here, which is really cool. Now, the question is, we have this, which is cool, but it doesn't really do exactly what we're looking for, right? Like we can adjust the intensity and the contrast so we can make it, the textures a little bit more in depth, right? But what if we want to break this up a tiny bit? We don't want the snow to just show up everywhere. We want it to show up in small areas. Well, what we can do is we can come in here and add in some noise to help break up our texture here. So what I'll do is I'll drag this vector scalar down like so. So that way it's just got more space because we're running out of space over here. And what we can do is we can go ahead and add in a noise texture. So we'll type texture. And then we'll click on our texture. If I zoom in a little bit, we'll click on our texture. We'll go to noise texture right here. And then we'll go ahead and add in our simplex noise. We'll go ahead and make that seamless. And then what we'll do is we'll take the same operators right here and we'll paste them down here. We'll drag, providing that we can, we'll drag this guy down, this guy's connected, this guy, and this guy down. And we'll drag this guy into here and we will say brightness of noise and contrast of noise. Just like that. And then what we'll do is we'll come in and then we'll go ahead and multiply this in. So we'll right click and type multiply and we'll drag this guy into here, providing it'll let me. There we go. And we'll drag this guy in and then we will connect this guy to this guy simply enough. So now if we save this and we go back, you can see here we have brightness and contrast. So if I start increasing my brightness and my contrast, you'll see that that starts affecting the snow. So we can actually really start affecting our snow the way we want to affect it. We can actually start bringing stuff in to our textures. So you can see where there's snow. We pull this back, you can see it kind of makes it a little bit more deepened, which is really cool. Now, we don't necessarily want our noise to be as aggressive. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and clamp this real quick. So we'll say clamp like that, and that'll clamp this from 0 to 1. So we'll go ahead and just drag that in there, and that'll stop anybody from going too crazy with it and making this just look absolutely horrendous. And so from here, what we can do is we can make it so we can tile our texture a little bit more. So let's do that. So we'll come in here, we'll right click, type UV, and we'll drop in a UV channel here. And then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and multiply with our vector. We'll multiply this and multiply it by a uniform scalar. Just like this. And we'll go ahead and say noise underscore UV, and we'll call it that. Now, if we go back and we start adjusting our noise UV, you'll notice that not much seems to happen. Okay, I figured out what was going on. So I needed to put a scalar clamp here, and I needed to also connect that up to here, and then everything seems to be working correctly now. So you can see this comes up to here to our scalar mix here, and that affects our color map as well. So if we drag this down here, you'll see that our shader is now working. So if we come back to, if we hit back, you'll see that we can now adjust the brightness of our map here. And you can see that we can start with like a little bit of snow and kind of start dragging in more snow. And we can adjust the brightness to help maybe, you know, bring the brightness up, adjust the contrast so it's just a little bit of snow, and then kind of bring down some more brightness. So we can really start controlling how we want our snow to look. Or we can really make it, you know, just take right over as if there's a bunch of snow here. Just like that. And we can also come in here and adjust our noise as well. So you can see something that we didn't see because of how whacked out these parameters were, was right here where it's kind of blurry. This is actually a noise pass that's here to make it look like snow. And if we adjust it, you can see that we can pull this back and adjust our contrast to really make it what we want it to be. So the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and make it so we can get a little bit more control out of our snow, and then we'll be done. So what we're going to do is we'll come into our dot product here, and we will go ahead and add in a smooth step. So we'll type smooth step, and we'll go ahead and drag our dot product into our X, drag this into our scalar OP, and then we're going to go ahead and add in our scalar uniform. So we'll type uniform, scalar uniform, and then we will go ahead and drag this guy into here. And then we will Control C, Control V, grab this guy and drag it into here. And we'll say Snow Blend 1 and Snow Blend 2. There we are. And then what we can do is if we go back to our visual shader, you can see these two little snow blends. Now, if we drag this, you'll see that we can actually invert our value, and we can also change some more blending that kind of gradiates this value here. So I can kind of pull this up and then pull this guy up like so. And you will see that as long as these two values, this value does not overlap this value, you can really have a good fine-tuned control over top of your snow shader. So I can say, I only want to have snow right here. So if I bring this down to like a 0.8, I can make it so that snow only affects a very small part of my object. So you can see it doesn't affect up here, but it affects down here. And it only affects here, but not here. So that's kind of the nice thing, is that it lets you really get full control, if I can do it correctly, lets you get full control over the amount of snow that you put on your objects. That's pretty much all we need to do. I mean, the only thing that we could probably do is just add in a texture vector here and maybe adding in a roughness value here, which we can quickly do. So if we right click and add in a texture uniform here, we can drag this into here. We can go into a color map and we can name this our base texture color. And then we can duplicate this like so and bring this guy back to our normal map and say base texture normal, just like that. Not normal, normal. And then we can drag this guy into here. We can drag this guy into here. And then we can go ahead and duplicate this guy one more time, drag him over here, and drop him in for our roughness texture. So we'll just go ahead and Control C, Control V, our scalar mix, drag in our base texture normal, call it base texture roughness, connect that to the top like we did before, grab our snow, drag that in as well, and snap this guy right here, and then go ahead and put that in as our roughness. And then we can, of course, hook up our scalar clamp just like that. And that'll add our roughness values into our projects. And if we go back, we'll need to put in those textures. So we can just do that real quick, like so. And our roughness. And you'll see it's going to import that. Now you'll notice that our roughness is a little bit on the shiny side, so we could do an additional little adjustment here if we wanted to, which would be something like a mix node, like so. And we might actually, well, it's a gray texture, so we can get away with this. So we'll drag this into here and then add in a uniform for our scalar. And just call this roughness amount, just like that. And we will drag this into here. And we could probably make this a 0. And if we hit Control S, we go back to our shader. That'll give us a little bit more control over our roughness value, providing that it actually wants to work correctly. So we'll drag this guy here. We'll take a look at this. It might need to be the opposite direction. Let me see. Oh, I'm affecting my snow texture. That's why. So we'll drag this guy into here. We'll drag this guy into here. We'll pull this guy up a tiny bit and drag him into here so we can adjust that little roughness there. And let's see if that works better. There we go. So now we can kind of adjust our roughness just so we can pull back some of that shininess that we're getting, because it's just a little bit too much. But other than that, I mean, we have our snow shader. You know, if you guys want to, you guys can come in and add in tileable textures. So that way you can actually tile everything and make it nice and pretty. If you do that, you can basically just follow this little bit of code here, literally just copy and paste it like so. And you can just kind of drag this back here and then connect it and change this from noise to base texture UV like that. And then you would just pass this into these guys just like you would expect. So you could just pass this guy into here and pass this guy into here. And then you basically have your UVs. So you can come back and you have your UV set done. And everything is respected as per usual. If you pull this back, you'll see that you get more snow as well. So that is all I have for you guys today. So if you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. Hey, if you dislike this video, go ahead and hit that dislike button, because I am here to make content for you guys. This video, as with most of my videos, are viewer suggested. So if you have a viewer suggestion, please leave them in the comments below and I'll be more than happy to put it on my Trello board. I am currently working on a WebRTC with Nakama tutorial, so look forward to that. And if you guys have any questions or comments about this, go ahead and leave a comment below, or you can hit me up on my Discord. Link is in the description and I'll be more than happy to help you out. But that is all I have for you today. So thank you so much again for watching. I will see you all next time. Thanks.